I learned to count seconds by watching my father's blood drip onto our kitchen floor. 15 drops before my mother screamed. 23 before the siren started. I was 8 years old, standing in the doorway of our Brooklyn apartment, watching two men in expensive suits walk away from the man who had taught me to ride a bike. Detective Marcus Hayes didn't die that night, but the father I knew did. The bullet lodged 2 inches from his spine, left him paralyzed from the waist down. The police called it a random mugging. My mother called it a message. I called it the beginning of my obsession with one name, Danta Moretti. For 15 years, I studied everything about the Moretti family. While other girls collected posters of boy bands, I collected newspaper clippings about organized crime. While they dreamed of prom dates, I dreamed of badges and handcuffs and watching Danta Moretti face justice. Now, at 23, I stood in FBI Director Wilson's office, staring at a photograph of the man who had destroyed my childhood. Danta Moretti looked different from the grainy surveillance photos I'd memorized. Older, sharper, more dangerous. His dark eyes seemed to look straight through the camera into my soul. Agent Hayes, Director Wilson said, sliding a thick file across his desk. You've been requesting the Moretti case since your first day at the academy. Care to explain why? I kept my face neutral, years of practice hiding the hatred burning in my chest. He's the biggest threat to organized crime enforcement in the Northeast, sir. His operation spans 6 states. Someone needs to bring him down. Wilson studied me with eyes that had seen 30 years of agents lie to him. Your father was Marcus Hayes, it wasn't a question. I nodded once, throat tight. Marcus was the best detective I ever worked with, Wilson continued. Before the shooting. And after Danta Moretti's father died 5 years ago, your dad did something that surprised everyone. He visited Danta in the hospital. They talked for 3 hours. Did you know that? My blood turned cold. No, sir. Your father never told you he and Antonio Moretti were partners? Before Antonio built his empire, before your dad joined the force? The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. 15 years of hunting Danta Moretti. And I didn't know the most important truth. My father and his father had been friends. I drove to the nursing home where my father lived with my mother, hands shaking on the steering wheel. The city blurred past my windows, Brooklyn transforming into Queens. The neighborhoods getting quieter, cleaner, further from the violence that had shaped my life. Dad sat in his wheelchair by the window, staring at birds he couldn't chase anymore. Mom was at work, her nursing shift at the hospital that paid for this place. He looked smaller than I remembered, his shoulders curved inward like he was protecting a wound that never healed. You never told me, I said without greeting. Antonio Moretti was your partner. Dad's hands tightened on the wheelchair arms. When he finally looked at me, his eyes held a sadness that went deeper than the paralysis. Sit down, Riley. It's time you knew everything. His voice was still strong, the one thing the bullet hadn't taken. Antonio and I grew up on the same block. We were brothers in everything but blood. When we were 20, we made a choice. He went one way, I went another. Antonio built his empire, Dad continued, staring out at the birds again. And I became a cop. For 20 years, we didn't speak. Then one day, he called me. Said he had cancer, 6 months to live. Asked if I'd meet him, just once. I sat frozen, watching my father's profile against the afternoon light. I went. We met at a cafe in Little Italy. He told me he regretted everything. The violence, the blood, the empire built on suffering. He begged me to watch over his son after he was gone. Said Danta was only 25, too young to carry that weight alone. You agreed. My voice came out sharper than intended. Dad finally looked at me. I told him I couldn't protect a criminal. Then 2 months later, Antonio died. And a week after that, someone put a bullet in my spine. He paused. The message was clear. Antonio's enemies wanted me to know they remembered our friendship. They wanted revenge. Danta ordered it. I whispered, no. Dad's voice was firm. Danta saved my life. His enemies pulled the trigger, but Danta's men are the ones who called the ambulance. He's been paying for this nursing home for 8 years, Riley. I stood so fast the chair fell backward. You're lying. Check the financial records, Dad said quietly. The anonymous donations that started the month after I got shot. The trust fund that pays your mother's salary when she can't work. All of it traces back to shell companies Danta controls. My world was crumbling. 15 years of hatred, 15 years of training, 15 years of believing I knew the truth. All built on lies. Why didn't you tell me? I demanded, because you needed your anger. After what happened, you were drowning. The hatred gave you purpose, got you through school, through the academy. I thought maybe you'd outgrow it, Dad's voice cracked. I never thought you'd actually get assigned to take him down. I walked out without another word. In my car, I pulled out the file Wilson had given me. Inside was everything the FBI knew about Dante Moretti's operation. Shipping routes, front businesses, suspected money laundering schemes. And at the back, a single note in Wilson's handwriting. Your father asked me to assign you to this case. Said you deserved the truth. Whatever that means, the Moretti headquarters was a shipping company in Red Hook, Brooklyn. At least, that's what the sign said. Everyone knew it was the heart of his empire, where decisions were made that affected millions of dollars and countless lives. I sat in my car across the street for 3 hours, watching men in expensive suits come and go. Security cameras covered every angle. Guards stood at both entrances. Getting inside would require authorization I didn't have. Then the front door opened, and Dante Moretti himself walked out. I'd seen his photograph 1,000 times, but nothing prepared me for seeing him in person. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair and the kind of presence that made everyone around him seem smaller. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. And when he glanced in my direction, his eyes were exactly like they'd been in the photographs, dark, intelligent, and completely unreadable. Our eyes met across the street. For 3 seconds, neither of us moved. Then he smiled, the kind of smile that said he knew exactly who I was, and walked to his car. My phone rang before I could follow him. Director Wilson's number flashed on the screen. Agent Hayes, I need you to come in immediately. 20 minutes later, I sat in Wilson's office for the second time that day. This time, I wasn't alone. A woman in her 50s stood by the window, her gray suit and severe expression marking her as someone important. This is Deputy Director Karen Foster, Wilson said. She's taking over the Moretti investigation. Sir, I was just assigned. You were assigned for hours ago, Foster interrupted. Her voice was cold, precise. In those 4 hours, Dante Moretti's lawyers filed a harassment complaint against the FBI. They claim an agent has been stalking him for years. They have evidence, Agent Hayes. Your apartment is full of newspaper clippings about him. Your computer history shows obsessive research. They're calling you unstable. The room spun. That's my investigation, Worky. That's obsession, Foster said flatly. You're off the case. In fact, you're on administrative leave pending a psychological evaluation. Your credentials, please. I wanted to argue. Wanted to scream that this was exactly what Dante would do. Use the system against his enemies. But Foster's expression told me arguing would only make things worse. I handed over my badge and gun, like I was surrendering pieces of my soul. Outside the building, the September air felt too cold for the season. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Agent Hayes, a smooth male voice said. Or should I say, former Agent Hayes? I knew that voice from wiretap recordings. Dante Moretti, how did you get this number? The same way I knew you were parked outside my building today. The same way I knew about your obsession with me before the FBI did. He paused. I'd like to meet. There are things you don't understand. I understand you destroyed my father's life. No, Dante said softly. I saved it. And if you're brave enough to hear the truth, meet me at Rossetti's Cafe in Little Italy. Tomorrow, noon. Come alone, or don't come at all. He hung up before I could respond. Rossetti's Cafe, the same place where my father had met Antonio Moretti 23 years ago. The symmetry felt deliberate, like Dante was writing a story, and I was just a character he was moving across the page. I should have reported the call. Should have told Wilson that Dante was reaching out. Instead, I went home and spent the night staring at my ceiling, counting the hours until noon. Rossetti's Cafe looked exactly like I'd imagined from Dad's description. Small, tucked between a bakery and a wine shop, with red check tablecloths and the smell of espresso thick in the air. I arrived 15 minutes early and chose a table where I could see both exits. Dante arrived exactly at noon. He wore jeans and a black sweater instead of his usual suit, but he still moved like he owned the space. Every eye in the cafe followed him. He sat across from me without asking permission. You look like your father, he said. Same green eyes. Same stubborn chin. Don't talk about my father like you know him, but I do know him. Dante signaled the waiter, ordered 2 espressos without asking what I wanted. Marcus Hayes taught me to play chess when I was 7. He was at my 8th birthday party. He's the one who taught me that honor matters more than power. I stared at him. You run a criminal empire. I inherited a criminal empire, Dante corrected. There's a difference. And every day, I work to make it less criminal and more legitimate. Your father is the reason why the espresso arrived. Dante added sugar to both cups, exactly the way I liked it. The detail unsettled me more than his words. You know how I take my coffee. I know everything about you. Riley, I've known about you since you were 8 years old. Standing in that doorway, watching your father bleed. I've watched you grow up from a distance. Watched you excel at the academy. Watched you build your entire life around destroying me. Stop calling me Riley. That's your name. The name your father gave you after his favorite poet, Rilke. He used to read you poetry before bed. Emily Dickinson was your favorite. My hand shook on the coffee cup. How do you know that? Because your father told me. We talk, Riley, every week. I visit him at the nursing home when your mother is at work. I've been visiting for 8 years. He's the closest thing to a father I have left. The cafe tilted. I gripped the table edge. You're lying. Call him. Ask him if a man named Vincent visits on Thursday afternoons. Vincent was my middle name before my father changed it. Your father is the only person who still calls me that. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and dialed. Dad answered on the second ring. Does someone named Vincent visit you on Thursday afternoons? I asked without greeting. The long silence told me everything. Riley, where are you? Answer the question. Yes, Dad said quietly. Vincent visits me every Thursday. Has for 8 years. We play chess. We talk about books. He's a good man trying to eat. I hung up. Across the table, Dante watched me with something that might have been sympathy. Why? I demanded. Why visit him? Why pay for the nursing home? Why pretend to care about the man whose life you destroyed? I didn't destroy your father's life. Victor Castellano did. Dante's voice hardened on the name. He was my father's oldest enemy. When my father died, Victor wanted to take over our territory. He knew the fastest way to hurt me was through the people my father loved. Your father was on that list, so you're saying you had nothing to do with it. I'm saying I spent 3 years hunting the men who shot your father. When I found them, I made sure they never hurt anyone again. The way Dante said it made my blood run cold. You killed them, yes, no hesitation, no regret. Victor Castellano and the 3 men who pulled the trigger. I did what the police couldn't, what your father's badge prevented him from doing. I gave him justice. That's not justice. That's murder. In my world, they're the same thing. Dante leaned forward. You've spent 15 years hating me, Riley, building a career on bringing me down. But you've been hunting the wrong man. I'm not your enemy. I never was. I wanted to believe he was lying. Wanted the world to be simple again, with clear heroes and villains. But the truth in his dark eyes was impossible to deny. What do you want from me? I whispered. I want you to see me clearly. Not as the monster you've imagined, but as I actually am. A man trying to honor his father's last wish. A man trying to build something better than what he inherited. A man who has spent 8 years protecting your family from the shadows because it's the right thing to do. And if I refuse to see you that way, then you'll spend the rest of your life hating an illusion. Dante stood. I have something for you. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. I'll send a car. If you want the truth about what happened to your father, be ready. I went back to the nursing home that afternoon. Dad was alone, reading a book with the kind of intense focus that meant he was avoiding thinking about something. You should have told me, I said from the doorway. He closed the book. Would you have listened? You were so angry, Riley, so convinced Dante was evil. If I'd told you he was visiting, that we were friends, you would have thought I'd betrayed you. Maybe I would have. But I deserve the truth. The truth is complicated. Dad wheeled himself to face me. Dante's father built an empire on violence. But Dante is different. He took over at 25 and immediately started changing things. No drugs in his territory. No human trafficking. He protects the neighborhood, keeps the streets safe. He's not a good man by society's standards, but he's trying to be better than his father. He kills people. Dad, he protects his people. There's a difference. Dad's voice was sad. I know you can't understand. You see the world in black and white, right and wrong. But out here, In the real world, good men sometimes do bad things for the right reasons. I left before he could say anything else that would shake my already crumbling beliefs. The next night, a black car arrived at my apartment exactly at 8. The driver was professional, silent, and took me to an address in Brooklyn Heights I didn't recognize. The building was a renovated brownstone, elegant and expensive. Danta met me at the door himself. He'd changed into dark slacks and a white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. "Thank you for coming." Inside, the brownstone was beautiful. Hardwood floors, exposed brick, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. It looked like a home, not a criminal's lair. "This is where I live," Danta said, watching my reaction. "Not the cold penthouse you probably imagined. I grew up in Brooklyn. I'll always be Brooklyn." He led me to a study where a chessboard sat ready between two leather chairs. "Your father and I always play here. He's beating me this season, 3 games to 2. Why am I here?" Danta gestured to a box on the desk. "Because you deserve to know everything." Inside the box were files. Police reports, witness statements, photographs. I recognized the case number immediately, my father's shooting. But these weren't the official FBI files. These were deeper, more detailed, with information I'd never seen. "Victor Castellano ordered the hit on your father," Danta began, sitting in one of the chairs. "But he had help. Someone inside the police department gave him your father's schedule, his route home, the exact timing." I looked up from the files. "That's impossible." "Internal Affairs investigated and found nothing because the person who betrayed your father was someone no one would suspect. Your father's partner, Detective Thomas Bryce." The room spun. I'd met Detective Bryce at Dad's retirement party. He'd cried talking about how much he missed working with Marcus Hayes. "You're lying." Page 17. Bank records showing deposits of $50,000 into an account under Bryce's wife's name. Made 2 days before the shooting. Danta's voice was gentle, like he knew how much this was hurting me. Page 23. Wiretap transcripts of Bryce and Castellano planning the attack. And page 31. Bryce's confession before he died. Heart attack. 3 years ago. Natural causes, verified by the medical examiner. Danta met my eyes. "I didn't kill him, Riley, but I made sure he knew I knew what he'd done before he went." I flipped through the files with shaking hands. Every page was another piece of truth I didn't want to accept. "The FBI never told me any of this," I whispered, "because they didn't know. I kept it quiet to protect your father. If this information went public, it would destroy what's left of his reputation. Cops don't forgive their own for being betrayed. They blame the victim." Danta stood, poured 2 glasses of whiskey from a crystal decanter. "Your father asked me to give you these files when you were ready. He thought tonight might be that time." I took the whiskey, drank it without tasting. "Why? Why does Dad trust you so much?" "Because I keep my promises. When my father died, he made me swear to things. First, to protect Marcus Hayes and his family for as long as I live. Second, to build something better than the empire he left me." Danta sat across from me again. "I've spent 10 years honoring those promises. The shipping company you surveilled yesterday? It employs 300 people legally. The front businesses the FBI tracks. They're real businesses that support real families. I'm not saying I'm clean, Riley. I'm saying I'm trying. Trying isn't enough. You still operate outside the law. Yes, because sometimes the law fails the people who need it most." We sat in silence, the chessboard between us like a no-man's land. I stared at the files, at the evidence of my father's betrayal by his own partner, and felt 15 years of certainty collapse. "What happens now?" I asked finally. "That depends on you." Danta leaned back in his chair. "You can take these files to the FBI, reopen the investigation, destroy what's left of your father's piece. Or you can do what he asked me to ask you, which is, work with me instead of against me. You want to fight organized crime? I can give you access to information the FBI only dreams about. You want to protect innocent people? I can show you operations the law can't touch. You want justice?" His dark eyes held mine. "I can give you that too. Real justice, not the kind that gets lost in courtrooms and technicalities. You're asking me to become a criminal. I'm asking you to see beyond the badge. The world isn't divided into criminals and cops, Riley. It's divided into people who hurt others and people who protect them. I know which side I'm on. The question is, do you?" I looked at the chessboard, at the game my father and Danta had been playing. The pieces were arranged in a complex middle game, neither side clearly winning. Just like the choice in front of me. I need time, I said. Take all the time you need, Danta stood. But while you're deciding, there's someone you should meet. He led me downstairs to a basement that had been converted into a gym. A girl around 16 was practicing on a heavy bag, her punches fast and precise. She had dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and Danta's dark eyes. Riley, this is Sophia, my daughter, I stared. The FBI files had never mentioned Dante having a child. Sophia stopped punching and studied me with the same intense focus as her father. You're the agent who's been trying to arrest Dad for 15 years, Sophia, Danta warned. What? It's true. Sophia wiped sweat from her face. Dad talks about you all the time. Says you're the most stubborn person he's ever met. Besides Grandpa Marcus, of course, you know my father. Uncle Marcus. Sure, Dad takes me to visit him every Thursday. He's teaching me poetry. Sophia grinned. Did you know he can recite all of The Road Not Taken from memory? Even in the wheelchair. He's sharp. I looked at Danta. Your daughter calls my father Uncle Marcus. She's called him that since she was 5. Danta's expression softened when he looked at Sophia. Her mother died when she was 3. Your father helped me learn how to be a dad and a boss at the same time. Taught me that Sophia needed to see both sides of me, the man who protects his family and the man who tries to be honorable even in a dishonorable business. Sophia punched the bag one more time. Dad won't let me join the family business, though. Says I'm going to college, becoming a lawyer or a doctor or something legitimate. She rolled her eyes. As if I want to spend my life in his world anyway. You don't? I asked. Are you kidding? I'm going to be a prosecutor. Put criminals in jail. She looked at her father with clear affection. Present company accepted, of course. Danta laughed, a sound I'd never imagined hearing from him. She's going to Harvard next year. Full scholarship. She's brilliant. I watched them together and saw something I'd never expected: a normal father and daughter, teasing each other, clearly loving each other. It didn't fit the image of Dante Moretti I'd carried for 15 years. Sophia left to shower, and Dante walked me back upstairs. She's the reason I'm trying to build something better. I don't want her to inherit an empire built on violence. I want her to inherit businesses she can be proud of, and if you can't make them legitimate in time, then I'll burn them down before I let her touch them. The certainty in his voice was absolute. My father made me promise to protect Marcus. I made myself promise to protect Sophia from the life I live. Those are the only two promises that matter. He drove me home himself in a normal car instead of the black sedan. We didn't talk much, but the silence felt different now. Less hostile, more complicated. At my apartment building, he stopped but didn't park. Your father told me something once. He said the hardest part of being a cop wasn't catching criminals. It was learning that sometimes criminals are just people who made different choices. Not worse choices. Just different. What are you saying? I'm saying I made my choices. You'll make yours. And whatever you decide, I'll respect it. But know this, Riley, I've spent 10 years keeping you safe from a distance. Watching your career, making sure nothing from my world touched you. That doesn't change, no matter what badge you wear or don't wear. I spent the next week suspended in limbo. No badge, no gun, no purpose. I visited Dad every day, and slowly he told me everything. About growing up with Antonio Moretti. About watching his childhood friend build an empire while he built a career in law enforcement. About the phone call when Antonio was dying. He asked me to watch over Danta. Dad said during one visit. Said his son was good, better than he deserved. Asked me to be the father Danta needed, since he wouldn't be around to do it himself, and you agreed. I told him I couldn't. Then a week after he died, I got shot, and Danta showed up at the hospital. He was 25, just lost his father, suddenly in charge of an empire he didn't want. And the first thing he did was make sure I got the best medical care money could buy. Dad wheeled to the window. He sat with me for 6 hours that first night. Didn't say much, just sat. And I realized Antonio was right. Danta was good. Trapped in a bad situation, but fundamentally good. So I started guiding him the only way I could. Teaching him to be the kind of leader his father never was. Did it work? Look at his territory, Riley. No drug trafficking. No prostitution. His businesses actually employ people, pay taxes, follow most of the laws. 10 years ago, None of that was true. My phone rang. Director Wilson, Agent Hayes, your psychological evaluation came back clean. You're reinstated effective immediately. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt dread. And the Moretti case, closed. We received anonymous intelligence suggesting Dante Moretti is cooperating with federal authorities on a larger organized crime investigation. He's untouchable for now. I hung up and immediately called Dante. You're working with the FBI. I'm working with people who want to take down actual monsters. Victor Castellano's organization. The Russians moving weapons through the port. The people who make my business look like a charity. His voice was calm. I told you I was trying to build something better. This is how. You're an informant. I'm a source. There's a difference. I give them information about organizations that hurt innocent people. They leave my legitimate businesses alone. Everyone wins, except your enemies. My enemies deserve what they get. No hesitation. Riley, I'm offering you the same thing I'm offering the FBI. Access, information, the ability to actually make a difference. Instead of pushing papers and hoping someone notices, I looked around my empty apartment. At the newspaper clippings I hadn't taken down. At the obsession that had defined my entire adult life. And in return, you see me clearly. Not as a villain or a hero, but as a person trying to do right by the people he loves. 2 days later, I met Dante at Dad's nursing home. It was Thursday afternoon, chess day. I watched from the doorway as they played, my father in his wheelchair. Dante sitting across from him on a regular chair like he didn't have an empire to run. You're getting predictable in the endgame, Dad said. Moving his bishop, you taught me to value safety over aggression, Dante countered. I taught you to know when to be safe and when to attack. Check. They played for another 20 minutes before Dad noticed me. Riley, come in. Dante's about to lose. I'm about to lose strategically, Dante corrected, smiling. There's a difference. I sat and watched them finish the game. Dad won, like he usually did. Afterward, we had coffee together, the three of us, talking about books and politics and Sophia's college applications. It felt normal. Almost like family. When visiting hours ended, Dante walked me to my car. Your father is the best man I know. He taught me more about honor than my own father ever did. Dante, I'm not asking you to forget who I am or what I do. I'm just asking you to see all of it. The good and the bad. The man and the criminal. Both exist in the same person. I started meeting with Dante weekly. He showed me his operations, the legitimate and the questionable. Introduced me to people he protected, neighborhoods he kept safe, businesses he supported. He wasn't lying. His empire was different from his father's. Smaller in scope, more focused on actual business than pure crime, but he still operated outside the law. Still made decisions about life and death without courts or juries. Still wielded power that came from fear as much as respect. I'll never be clean, he told me one night over dinner in Little Italy. My father's legacy is written in blood. But I can be better. I am better. Better isn't the same as good. No, but it's the best I can offer. He met my eyes across the table. Your father understands that. He knows I'm not a good man trying to be perfect. I'm a flawed man trying to be better. There's a difference. I thought about Dad, about 15 years in a wheelchair because of violence Dante couldn't prevent. About 8 years of secret visits and chess games and friendship built on complicated truth. About Sophia, who called my father uncle and wanted to be a prosecutor. About all the ways the world refused to be simple. I want to help, I said finally. Not as an agent. Not as someone trying to take you down. But as someone who wants the same thing you do. To protect innocent people from actual monsters. Dante's smile was slow, genuine. Then welcome to the team. 6 months later, I sat in Dad's room, watching him and Dante play chess while Sophia did homework in the corner. The FBI had reassigned me to white-collar crime, far from the organized crime division. I officially had nothing to do with Dante Moretti. Unofficially, I fed him information about investigations that threatened innocent people in his territory. He fed me intelligence about criminal organizations the FBI couldn't touch. Together, we'd help take down to human trafficking rings and a weapons smuggling operation. Check, Dad said, grinning. Dante studied the board, then laughed. You set that trap 6 moves ago. 7. You're getting slow in your old age. I'm 35. Like I said, old. I watched them. These two men who should have been enemies but had chosen to be family instead. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Agent Hayes, this is Deputy Director Foster. We need to talk about your relationship with Danta Moretti. My blood froze. Across the room, Danta's eyes met mine. He'd heard every word through the phone speaker. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then Dad spoke, his voice calm. Tell them the truth, Riley. Tell them you're protecting your family. The rest will work itself out. I looked at my father, at the man who had taught me right and wrong while secretly befriending the son of the criminal who had defined my life. At Danta, who had spent 10 years keeping promises to a dying man. At Sophia, innocent and brilliant, trying to build a life better than the one she'd inherited. I'm protecting my family, I said into the phone. And I'm not stopping. I hung up. Whatever came next, we'd face it together. The FBI agent, the mafia boss, the paralyzed detective, and the girl who wanted to be a prosecutor. A family built not on blood, but on complicated choices and the stubborn belief that better was possible, even for people like us.